Okay, let's get started. Next week, January 17th, Susan Milinkovich will be talking about using compositional tools to create intimate landscapes. Then January 31st, photojournalism night. January, what? Okay, I got them out of order. January 24th, nature competition. And then February 7th, black and white projection competition. SIG meeting, February 6th, street photography. This is going to be our third attempt to try and get this SIG meeting through, so hopefully it won't snow that evening. Darkroom door, articles are still needed. The deadline for submission is January 15th, so if you have something that you think would be interesting, write it up and submit it to Deborah Willis. Check out the website. Winter school enrollment, fundamentals of good photography, the class has started. Lightroom starts February 3rd, Photoshop, the class has started. I'm imagining that you could still where's Chris? I'm imagining that you could still enroll for the Lightroom class. Introduction to matte cutting and photo mounting. This slide has been up there multiple times, so you're probably all familiar with it. January 7th and 21st are going to be sessions. February 4th and 18th, $3 for a single mat, $5 for a double mat, and it's a fantastic deal. Dennis does a nice job of the presentation. Still looking for a treasurer and a competition chair. We could use some volunteers. And that's that. Richard is going to do the presentation for us this evening.
Hello, everyone. Let me just turn down the heat a little. For those of you at home that don't know, I'm Richard Ader. Three things. One, I'm sorry the presenter didn't show up tonight or canceled. So the last second I just got asked, do you have anything? There's a talk I gave 2 years ago. I haven't looked at the slides since, so on calibration. We'll do that, thank you. The other is I didn't shave this morning. I'm sorry, didn't know I'd be presenting. And the third is that the reason for the clown hat is these things have reached, we've used them several decades, and they're ear mics, and they're now to the point where they're falling off all the time. You'll see presenters. And I lectured the day before yesterday here, and it fell off 3 times, and I said, I've had it, so tonight I've hooked it up with a little clip to the side of my hat. I don't care how stupid I look, but I know it's going to stay on. So with all of that, while the judges are there, we're going to talk again on how introduction to monitor calibration. And this is more just the theory, beginner's theory on this. And anytime questions come up, just shoot your hand right up too, because I want to go through this tonight just to give you an idea why it's important to do that. So now as we do this, because as you all know, our screen up in the front is a projection screen, and it doesn't show colors or details as good as the side screens. So the side screens, if you don't see the changes here, some of these are subtle color changes. They are easy to see on the side monitors. So with all of that, let's get into the introduction to monitor calibration. Okay, first of all is the question, why calibrate your monitor? Because interestingly enough, most photographers, if you talk to them, have not calibrated. It's about 50-50. So there's a lot of photographers who have not. So the question is, why? And let me first say before I start that in a world where you are using your computer monitor and not doing anything with your pictures, you're not printing them, sending them to Facebook or Instagram, showing them to someone else, entering in competition. There is no need at all to calibrate your monitor because you are the only one that's looking at it on that particular device. So that's not the case, though, for any of us. So this is why we calibrate our monitor. Now, images on your monitor are going to look the same when they are viewed on another calibrated monitor. That's the key thing. You want your images, when you send them to someone else, especially if you're in business and you're doing product photography and you send to a client, you send your work, you want it to look exactly as it did on your computer. You want your images to be printed with the correct colors. Now, what needs calibration in your system? First of all, the color needs to be calibrated on your monitor. The other is the brightness needs to be calibrated. And the color temperature needs to be calibrated. Those are the three things that need to be calibrated. Usually is a one-time thing. Because when we talk about calibration, you'll hear about people calibrating every week or whatnot. If you're doing industrial work, you know, these people are thousands and thousands of pictures, they calibrate their monitors weekly. For a regular photographer like us, once or twice a year is probably all that's needed. If you do it once just to get started, that's good. So color. Now, it seems complicated. We'll go through this slowly, but here's the theory. This is, and the side monitors might show it better, this is the correct color for this image. So, this image is the correct color. If looked on a calibrated monitor, it would look fine. All of our colors are fine. There's no color cast. Now, let's say your monitor is too green. I mean, that's just the way, you know, and I exaggerated it here. But let's say your monitor has a little too much green in it. Okay, you put this picture, the reenactor, you put it up here, and what's the thing you're going to do? Is you're going to take away green or add magenta, you're going to correct it so it looks fine on your monitor. So you corrected on your monitor, which was too green, and now it looks perfect on your monitor. The problem is your monitor was the problem. You've gotten it to look good on it, but now if you send that same original, the picture here that you fixed up by making it like redder or taking the green out, if you send it to someone with a calibrated monitor, it's going to look magenta-ish. Why? Because this is how it looked on your monitor, because your monitor was not calibrated. You've made it look perfect on your monitor, and now you think, all my problems are solved. This picture looks perfect. But if you send it to someone whose monitor is actually reading colors correctly, again, to get it from there to there, you've added magenta. It looks perfect now, but you send it to someone with a calibrated monitor, you send it for competition, you send it to a client, and they're going to see this image, and it's going to be just magenta. And so basically, that's not what you want. So the original fault was your monitor was too greenish. But you see, what you did is you just made the picture perfect, which is not going to help when you send it out or you post it. Now, how do you calibrate your monitor? And the way we do this is we input a certain color, because you say, gee, if my monitor is too green or too this, or how do I know? Well, reds, greens, and blues, RGB, which makes up all monitor pixels, they are an electrical standard, meaning and we'll go through that. So we put and I'll show you how we input a color in. So input a known color to your monitor screen, like a pure red. So you get some contraption that'll feed in pure red to your monitor. Then you measure on your screen to see what that color is. You know you're putting in a pure red, so your measuring device should measure it as pure red. If it measures it a red with a tiny bit of green, it knows that's incorrect because it knows it's inputting a red signal. And the third is then make adjustments. So you input a known color to your monitor screen, like red. Measure to see what it's actually looking like on your monitor. And if there's any difference, make adjustments to your monitor so that color, that red, is displayed correctly. Now, on RGB, go into Photoshop, you could see that. When we select red, all colors, I mean, there's reds that have a little bit of green, a little bit of blue in it. That's what gives us all our millions of shades of red. But pure red can be measured by each pixel, the number of red, green, and blue pixels that are in this sample that I took right up there. And you see for this one, it's 128 red, 0 green, 0 blue. That by definition is pure red. There's no ifs, ands, buts, or anything. So this color right here that we have is pure red. So you can get a machine that generates R128, green 0, blue 0. And so you know that's a perfect red signal. Same thing for green. 0 red, 128 of green, 0 of blue. Pure green and pure blue. 0 red, 0 green, 128 of blue. So there are standards for this, and you could measure these colors so that you could input a color into your machine. So how do we measure the color? So once we have, and this is all with software, you buy the little kit and it inputs like a red signal. You don't have to do any of that. It automatically puts in a red signal and then measures it. Then it puts in a blue signal and then measures it on your screen. And it puts in a green signal and measures it. If your monitor is completely calibrated, then it'll put in the red 128 red, 0 green, 0 blue, the pure red signal, and the measuring device will measure 128, 0, 0, and says, you're perfect. So we measure it now by all of these little calibration units come with a device, which you just place and you just let hang over the screen. Now the software on these calibration devices, you run the software, and the software in the middle of the screen here will input automatically different colors. It'll all different shades of red, all different shades of green, all different shades of blue. And then this right here, sitting on that, will be measuring those. So you have a way of putting the color in, it's measuring it, and seeing is your monitor off any. If the color was not displayed correctly on the monitor, let's say on that original picture, you put in a pure red signal, and the reader on the front shows, oh, it's like R120, green 5, blue 5, that kind of thing. So it knows, hey, it shouldn't be like that. What happens then is the software automatically makes adjustments to your graphic or video card to make that adjustment. Or on some older monitors, it'll actually tell you on ones that you could adjust on your monitor, the R, G, and B, it'll say, move your red up and down until you see it on this line. It'll give you instructions. So all of these basically work the same way. You buy some software with a little hardware piece that's there. Spider makes it, Color Monkey, there's a whole bunch that make it, or borrow it from a friend that has it. But you just load the software onto your computer. It automatically puts in, it says, I want to calibrate. It puts in the colors. You have the measuring thing that's automatically measuring it. And then either you or it will make adjustments. Once you do that, then every color that's inputted, and it usually shows you a graph like this, where the pure red is down here. And it'll show you your monitor was over here. It was just off a little. And then as you calibrate, it'll show you at the end that it's the same. But again, you don't have to worry about it. You just have to do it till it says your monitor's calibrated, and that's it. So it's a real simple automated thing that you do once. Now, that's for color. Brightness, and by the way, we're using the same equipment to measure to measure and do all these things. Brightness now, then the program will cycle through adjusting brightness. Now, what should I set my monitor brightness to? And it's surprising to know that monitor brightness, first of all, is measured in a unit called candelas per square meter, CD per meter squared. So candelas is when you're in the photographic literature, that's what you'll see. Now, new monitors out of the box are set to about 200 to 250 candelas. For photography, we want 80 to 120, a huge difference. Why is that? Because monitors, most people who buy monitors or use monitors are using it for around the house or business or whatnot, where the lights are on, they're doing spreadsheets, things like that as well. You need a nice bright monitor. So they're set by that by default. Whereas we want to be working it a lot lower. Now, to go back to these kind of pictures, what happens if your monitor is not calibrated? So this is on a brightness 100 monitor. So a monitor that's brightness is set to 100 candelas. Our picture looks perfect. Okay? Now, we give it to someone else whose monitor is set to 200, twice as bright, and the picture looks too bright. If the judge's monitor is set like that, he's going to say, this is no good. If it's a client or whatnot. So the key is both have to be you both have to be working on the same program here. So let's go. So brightness 100. So let's say now, so this is a nice calibrated monitor for photography. But let's say your monitor out of the box, you get it, and you open up, you get a new computer, and you put the picture on, and the first thing, no problem, it's just a little too bright. So what'll you do? You'll darken it a little. So on the brightness 200 monitor, you'll darken your image so it looks perfect. And you'll say, great, no problem, everything's working fine. The problem is now, if you send this image that you've made to a person with a calibrated monitor, because remember, you have your monitor, the person's too light, because your monitor's too bright. And so you've darkened that. So it looks perfect to you on your monitor, but then you give that to the judge or your client who's looking at a monitor calibrated to 100, and it's going to look dark. So you start to see now, you say, well, wait, but if everyone had a monitor that was 200 brightness, then it would be fine. If all of these were the same, but that's why we have standards. Most clients, judges, people who do photography, their monitors are calibrated at 100 brightness. So that's what we want to aim for when we're sending things, out. So that is the theory behind that. So monitor brightness on a monitor calibrated to 120, there's a perfect picture. It'll appear, though, on a let's see, wait. Yes, okay. So here is the normal picture on a brightness 120 monitor that you've made. Everything is calibrated correctly. On someone whose monitor is calibrated to 80, it'll appear, if their brightness is set to 80, it'll appear too dark. If they're set to 120, as yours is, it'll be the same. If their monitor is set to 250, it'll be too light. So your monitor up here at 120, you've made a perfect picture. That's not the problem. But as you can see, depending on who you send it to, it might be too dark or too light. And that's why we have standards. The color is an absolute standard. Red is red, period. Brightness, it could be anything as long as everyone has the same amount. If all you're doing is sending, if your monitor is 250 brightness, and all of you're doing is sending it to friends and whatnot too, whose monitors are 250, everything will always be perfect. But in the world where you're sending it out to an Instagram or Facebook, their systems are calibrated a certain way, judges, clients, that type of thing too. You want to have a standard. So an 80 to 120 in that range is usually what photographers use. So this is the reason. Now, I'm confused already, and I'm giving this presentation. But let me just add a bunch more confusing things, which we're not going to talk about, which is printing. Because people say all the time, gee, why doesn't this look like... What you see is what you get is the hardest thing to do in printing, to make it look right. And here's the case where, okay, if we have... On the bright, let's see. If this is what it should be, right here, and our monitor, okay, if we print, okay, if that's the perfect print, if we print now from the brightness 80 monitor, right there, so if we are here, and this is our monitor calibrated at 80, and this looks dark, so we lighten it up so it looks perfect, the print might look too light. Good. Printed from 120 will look correct. Here, our brightness 250 monitor, because here it is, this will look too bright on our monitor, so we'll darken that to make it look perfect. Once we darken it, we say, gee, that looks fine, but then we send it to Costco to get printed, and it comes back too dark. So again, it's important to know across the board, the printers, everything else, what everyone is printing. If everyone is using 120, fine. Then if that's it, your print is going to look like that. If you're printing from a monitor that's too bright and you darken it down, your print's going to be too dark. We're not going to talk about printing. So again, that's the spider, the measuring thing. The third one is color temperature. Color temperature is important to adjust once. Now, what is color temperature? Again, it's measured in Kelvin, and all that is actually, it's fairly simple. People say, what's Kelvin, whatnot? It's a scientific term, but basically there is some standard hard ball of metal, I don't know what that is, and they heat it up, and they use instead of centigrade or Fahrenheit, they use a Kelvin scale. And at 2,000 degrees Kelvin, that ball will glow red hot. So that's where the color red comes. They heat it to 6,000 Kelvin, and it'll be white hot. And if it's 11,000 Kelvin, it'll be blue. That's why the stars, the hottest stars are blue stars. You know, red tends to be the more warmer ones. So this is physically just taking a ball of metal, standard metal, I forget what metal is, and heating it to different temperatures, and that's the color it glows. So when you go to buy a light bulb in the store, now that they're all in kelvins, you buy a 2700 Kelvin light bulb, those are the warm ones. 7,000 are the ones like the fluorescent ones, those are the cool ones as well. So sunlight has all of these same features. And again, at 6,500 Kelvin, person looks fine. At 3,500, which is kind of the golden hour, in the morning, it has this more orange cast. Under like cloudiness, which tends to be a higher degree temperature Kelvin, 7,500, it looks a little blue. So you could see on that same picture, but the only thing we've changed here is not color, not brightness, is color temperature. So you want to set your color temperature on your monitor, because if your monitor is set to 3,500 and you say, gee, this picture looks too orange, and you correct it, on other monitors it's going to look different. And there is a standard, and I'm quite sure it's 6,500. So most monitors are set to, is that, Dennis, is that, yeah, 6,500 is Kelvin is kind of the standard for setting the monitor. And this is usually a one-time thing you set. Again, same thing you could see. If your monitor was set to warm, this might be the correct picture, and that's what it looks there. However, if you take a picture and it's in the golden hour and your monitor is calibrated, it will look like that. But again, you have to make sure your monitor is set to the correct color temperature. And again, same measure. It all uses the same software. When you plug that software in, it runs through all the colors, it measures them, and then adjusts your monitor. It'll run through the brightness. You say, and you tell the software, you don't tell it anything about colors because color is color, are the correct ones. But it'll ask you, what brightness do you want? You say 100 or 120 candelas. And fine, it'll do the measuring and it'll set your brightness to that. And the Kelvin, you tell it what you want it set to. You say 6,500 and it will make the internal adjustments. So once you just tell it, so I want 6,500, I want 100 candelas, and you just plug it in, it just automatically goes through its cycle, makes its adjustments, and that's it. You're done. Now, after all of that and all of those variables, I feel like an infomercial. There's more. There's more that it's not that simple. Even if your monitor is calibrated, you can get into trouble and send the wrong pictures to a client. And that is ambient light. Your monitor should be the brightest light source in the room. This is really key. There is if you work, and you just try this at home, if your monitor, depends on, you could do this in Photoshop, because in Photoshop, you could vary what the background is. You just right-click on this area, and you can go from black to white. Take a picture of yours and put it on, and change the background from black to white. And sometimes what happens is the picture will look dark. Now, this isn't a good example, but it's what happens. And the reason is because our eyes, this is so bright, our eyes constrict. They constrict, the pupils constrict. And now this will look dark. Now our pupils dilate and that looks bright. And where this comes into play is I have my monitor up against a window. And when the blinds are open, all my pictures look completely dark. And even though I know it's an optical illusion, no, these are just all dark. And the reason is because the sun is coming through the windows, my pupils are constricted, my monitor looks dark. I put the blinds down, and the picture looks perfect. So if you're doing your editing, you've got a perfectly calibrated monitor, and you're doing your editing in a room with the blinds open and whatnot too, your pictures are going to be all off as well, just because of this phenomenon. So congratulations, now you have a calibrated monitor. Your images are going to look identical on other calibrated monitors, except, there's another except, if the other monitor is not calibrated. If you have a perfectly calibrated monitor and you send this to a friend whose monitor's 250 and whatnot too, it might look a little too light, too dark, something like that, too green, too red, or whatnot. You can't control that. I once asked the judges a few years ago, I said, so I get this straight, what do you guys have your monitors calibrate? You know, so I get it, what brightness level do you have it? And I remember they laughed at me like, whatever it's shipped as, out of the box. So that doesn't, in other words, they weren't adjusting it at all, at least the ones I talked to that one night as well. So it's no guarantee on these as well. Now, let me say that for most of these things that we talked about, the changes are small. It's not that a judge or a client's going to say, oh, this is a red picture, or this is a blue, or this picture's way too light. It's subtle things, but you want your things to, you put a lot of work into it. You want it to display perfect, the way you have it. So if the person's other monitor you're sending it to is not calibrated, then nothing you can do about that. If the brightness of the other monitor is set differently, if yours is all calibrated, yet you send it to someone whose monitor is calibrated too bright, it's going to look different. If the lighting conditions are different on the other monitor, you send this to a friend, a picture, and they're looking at it in a bright room and everything else like that. Again, nothing you could do. And you could see these same, that's why photography is so difficult. Ansel Adams, I think it was in his book that he mentioned with light on a print. And that's why you use these kind of spots and whatnot. They're color calibrated and whatnot. But putting the spotlight on the picture improves the brilliance of the picture, the reflectance by, it's a significant amount. And you could see that on your wall. If you have a picture hanging there by the light and you just move it over a foot, it's going to look too dark. Again, so it depends on the conditions you're looking at these things. And if the other monitor is using a different color space, which we're not going to get into too. These are smaller things. So the question then you come up with is, why did I go through all that work calibrating my monitor? Which is a good question. Is one, it's not hard to do, number one. And two is that you know your images are going to be pretty much perfect. And the other things, if you put it on Facebook and someone else is looking at it, it's not going to be off that much. It's going to be as good as they can be. When you send it out to be printed, it's most likely going to be right on. The judges are going to look at it fine. You give it to other photographers, it's going to be fine. So that's some of the rationale for that. A business client, if you're doing anything professionally, for judging, and your images are more likely to print with the correct color. But there was an except and there's a but. Printing, which we're not going to get into. That's another issue for another day. So, printed images too light or too dark. This is just a basic thing because that's something I hear all the time. My images are too light or too dark. It could be the monitor setting is too bright or not bright enough. Need to adjust the brightness. Could be the type of paper you are printing on. That's another thing. Printing is a whole different area we're not going to get into. Prints look different, and the reason people are always not happy with their prints is because in the old days, those of you who are old enough to remember slides always looked great because it's transmitted light. Things that the light is coming through your computer, that has a real big brilliance. Prints are reflected light, and reflected light, the whites aren't as brilliant. So again, if you have, and glossy is more reflective than matte, so if you have a picture on a matte surface, it's just not going to, it looked much, much better when I had it on the screen. So you have to get used to that there is a difference. Some of the metallic papers are getting very close to how it looked on the screen as well. But understand with a print that it's not only that it is a reflective light rather than a transmitted light, so it won't look as brilliant, but also where you have it. If you take that print and walk it around your house, if you put it right by a spotlight or something like that, it'll look really nice. It'll look nice and brilliant. You move it out of that light, it might look a little flat. You take it into a room with fluorescent light, it might look a little off color. You take it by a window with sunlight, it might look the correct color. So there is a lot of variables, which is why in professional photography, clients, you and your clients both calibrate your monitors. When things are hung in galleries, the lights are color corrected and they're aimed exactly at the picture. So that's why when these things are done correctly or for exhibits or whatnot too, that you want everything as good as possible. So again, if your monitor isn't calibrated great and you put a picture up on Facebook and whatnot, odds are it's going to look great at the other end too. So these are more smaller things, and I exaggerated some of them to show the difference and why we calibrate. There is a thing called soft proofing, which we're not going to get into as well, whereas since the printer could also print things a little bit different, because every printer uses a different code in order to translate the colors from your file into the printer. Costco might use a different one than your home printer or that CVS uses as well. But there is a way, if you know that little code that they have, and you plug it into Photoshop or Lightroom, you could see and tell it, I'm going to have them print this on glossy paper. It'll actually show you with the CVS printer what your print is going to look like. And you say, oh, that looks a little too dark or light or this or a little too, you can make the adjustments there. So it might look a little funny on your computer, but you know when you give it to CVS then, their print, you know how it's going to look already. But again, we're not getting into that. So how will your images look on Facebook? And again, depends if the other monitor is color calibrated, depends on the brightness setting of the other monitor, depends on the ambient light of the room or the viewer, and also depends on the color space of your image, which we're not going to get into. Is Facebook and Instagram use They convert everything to sRGB, so if you print it in a bigger color space, some of those will get clipped. Again, these are minor things, but it just shows you how intricate this could get, which is, again, when I always end with an I'm sorry slide. I'm sorry for all of this, even though I'm only peripherally involved. I didn't make any of these rules. But what I hope to get across is that it's easy to calibrate the monitor. The software is simple. You put it in, it runs through its thing, you're done. And if you know, again, to do your editing in a room where the monitor is usually the brightest thing as well, then you're going to be safe for 99% of the things. Your pictures are going to look fine for the judges, for this, to give to other people, to put on Facebook, whatnot, all of those things. I know there's a lot of talk about Facebook uses a different color space, but you know what? These changes are extremely difficult to see. So I think I hope to give you the rationale tonight for just why to go through the simple thing of calibrating the monitor, why that is important, and again, how to process your pictures, with the ambient light set so you have no outside light, and that should do it. So any questions on this? Let me put up the lights then and see the stairs of the, yes. That can't be. Yeah. Correct. For the people at home, the question was, so now if it's, if you submit a picture to the projection competition and it doesn't score well, it is not your fault. That's right. It is all in the calibration and software there. Huh? Oh, cataracts, yes, that's it. But what you can see from this is there are a tremendous amount of variables. Some are theoretic or make little differences, like color space, but others, like the light in the room when you edit or whatnot, can make a big difference. I mean, your pictures, again, if you do your pictures in a bright room and everything as well, two people you submit those to, there's a good chance those are going to look a little, they will look a little too light. In other words, if the room is bright, your monitor will look dark. So what you'll do is you'll artificially brighten those pictures. So they'll look fine to you every time you go look, but if you send them to someone else, they might look too bright. Yeah. Yeah, there's something in the control panel or settings that you can see what your monitor is set to. You can, usually some monitors in the monitor, you can, there are controls on the side that you could actually see the brightness and whatnot there as well. On the monitor, I think when you right-click in Windows and look at the display settings, those are more the color profiles. I don't think, in terms of what your monitor is set to, its color temperature and brightness. It's usually if there are controls on your monitor, you might be able to, otherwise not. The software usually reads that for you. I think, is that the... Yeah, when you do the adjustment with the software. Yes. Okay, yeah. So in other words, your monitor has a setting, and some of them will have that you could adjust brightness up and down, but some of them will the problem there is in those monitors, I'm quite sure they will tell you like 0 to 100 or something like that, but it's not the unit of candelas. Right, so in other words, if you're trying to get, where is my monitor? Is it 250 candelas? Is it 100? You'll go into your brightness settings, and the brightness there's a brightness and contrast, and they're both 0 to 100. You can go up and down, but that doesn't tell you the candelas. But the software, when you plug it in, that'll tell you the candelas, what your brightness is, and the color temperature. Yeah. Okay, the question is, yeah, the color profiles when posting to Instagram or Facebook is theoretically is Instagram and Facebook use sRGB. They convert everything to that. So we're usually working in Adobe RGB. And Adobe RGB, or if some people are working in ProPhoto, which are big color spaces, you could theoretically have a color in Adobe RGB, a real saturated blue or something like that, that when you send it to Facebook, it can't display that color, so it moves it down to something into the sRGB. But two things is, one, I found that to be really unusual because even with that shift, it's really hard to tell. But if that does happen, what you do is you convert your picture, just make a duplicate and convert it to sRGB on your monitor. And if you see, oh yeah, this looks a little purple there, you can make the adjustments in the sRGB thing to the way you want it, and then send that sRGB to Instagram or Facebook. So that's what, if you notice there's a change, this clipping of colors from Adobe RGB to sRGB, you could convert to sRGB on your computer, make it the way you want, and then send that one off. Any other questions? Yeah. There was a what? An Apple has a P3 color space? Okay. Is that close to, do you know what that's close to, or? Closer to Adobe or sRGB? Yeah, that is, I think a lot of them sit in the, Adobe RGB range. These spaces are, there are certain saturated, highly saturated colors that you'll notice a change between color spaces. For a lot of them, though, it's very, very difficult. The thing is with color spaces, and again, we're not going to get into any of that, where when people ask, well, why don't I just use like ProPhoto, the color space that has the most ones? And the answer to that is that's fine, but most monitors will not display those colors. So in other words, ProPhoto, most monitors will display Adobe RGB and sRGB. If it doesn't display the colors of ProPhoto, then even working in that space won't help you. Or if a printer, some printers will print those really far out gamut colors. But if the printer you're sending it to, or your printer, doesn't print those, so working in a very large color space won't have any advantage because you won't see it on the monitor and the printer won't print it. So it really depends on your individual which is most people wind up in that Adobe RGB, Apple P3 kind of middle type of thing as well. But if you're ProPhoto and your monitor could display it, or you're sending it to a printer that can handle all those, that's a whole different thing. That's fine. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a few minutes before the judges are ready. Again, I apologize for the funny hat, for not shaving, and that type of thing too. So I hope we got something out of it, and we'll just wait for them now. And for the people at home, go get something to drink.
For those interested, at the end of the first, Ohio State's up 7-0.
doing people first. People to talk to.
Yeah. You don't want that.
You zoomed in, I bet you were pixel peeping.
Accidentally clicked on it.
I woke up early and started doing stuff. Stuff around stuff around the house is, I like sat down for about an hour.
You ready to go? You know why this one was scratched?
Because it was in circle people. Ignore number 11.
Test, test. Okay, we'll get things ready for the judges' comments, and if the judges would come up and have a seat. So we've got one ear mic. There's Thank you for attending tonight's People competition. I think this is the last People one for the year. I will have the judges introduce themselves, and then we'll get to the scoring. So, Mark, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark, thanks.
Got it?
You didn't leave me any instructions.
Really? There it goes.
Testing, oh, there we go. I'm Mark. I'm a photographer from Elyria. I do weddings, portraits, anything. I'm a member of ESPC over in Avon Lake. I've been doing photography professionally for about 15 years.
Hello, my name is Angelo Marandino. I'm an editorial photographer here in Cleveland. I mostly photograph people, and been making photos for, 20 or so years, and I'm still enjoying it, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, once I get up. I'm Wally Nell. I'm a member of here. I've been doing photography since the mid 80s, and I've been doing it professionally from about 1988. My first love is people and sports. So, yep, that's me.
Because the entries were a little light today, we're going to be commenting on all the images, and hopefully won't take more than 45 minutes to an hour.
All right. I really enjoy this image. The dancers at Rule of Thirds, she's got a good pose. The lighting on her is great. The environment she's in is wonderful. The only drawback is that arch is cut off right at the top. And it just, as a carpenter, and I like to see things fall. I like to see it go all the way around. So just back up a little bit, widen out a little bit or something, but make that arch full come around there, and it would just improve the visual part of this.
Feat of Wonder, Susan Bestel, 23 points, third place.
Okay. So this looks like it's a conceptual type of image with a message. So there's definitely a personal and emotional connection to it. I'm guessing that the circular blur might have been added after the fact, or the back. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. It doesn't look like a straight photograph to me, so it looks like there's some kind of compositional element to it. But the tones are nice, wide range from black to white, and I would say my only thing is I can't tell if it's a photograph or if it's more of I don't know what the right word would be when you get in after the fact and start altering it. But there is feeling, and there's definitely something to relate to in the photograph.
New year, new problem. Dan Sandy, 21 points.
It's a nice image with nice soft tones on it, nice soft light, but it is directional. You can see modeling in the face, and the person is looking off to her left, and that's nice. There's some backlighting on the hair. I'm not sure if it's backlighting or just but the hair is nicely separated from the background.
Girl at Franklin Conservatory, Marge Brady, 21 points.
It's a lovely picture of a dancer playing in the water, doing that. The background is really busy. It takes away from her. It's bright, it's overexposed a bit. There's some stuff on the left that kind of detracts your eye. There's a new thing in Photoshop that you can just blur the backgrounds after the fact. If you could have gone in and just blurred that out, darkened it a little bit, your eye would have gone right to her and stayed right on her.
Enjoy Life, Susan Bestel, 20 points.
I think this is really appropriate considering that it's 20 degrees outside right now. But I like this photograph. I think silhouettes are always challenging photographs to make, but this has a nice feel and mood to it. There's one little, almost a tangent of the two of the boats on the right that doesn't make or break the photograph, but it's one of those things I try to look for to make sure there's a good amount of space between what's happening to really give it depth. But yeah, this is a very relatable photograph. Maybe a little heavy on the orange in the sky. I don't know if that was necessary. You'd still convey the sunset, but this is, yeah, a nice moment that I'm sure we've all experienced and enjoyed.
Bass Tournament, Dan Sandy, 22 points.
Well, I'm glad that I got this this picture to talk about. I think it's really beautiful, with just the hands showing. I mean, you can see that it's people. You can see what they're doing. They're playing this instrument. There's a bit of motion in the back one, in the person's left hand, which is acceptable, and you've got the lines going nicely from one side to the other. It's nicely done.
Tapping Out a Tune, Bill Keaton, 23 points, third place.
A real nice shot of I'm going to say a brother and a baby brother or something like that. It's cropped tight. This is really an environmental picture. I'm going to say it may be Africa or something like that. But I would widen out. You know, his shoulders cut off. It's really, really tight. And there's emotion here, and there's feelings here, and there's an environment here that would probably go really well with these two people here. So I would have just backed up a little bit.
Congolese Brothers, Mike Lonsdale, 19 points.
It was a Goulardi. Is that what I'm thinking of right now?
Yeah.
I think that this definitely conveys a feeling.
Really?
I'm gonna have nightmares tonight.
Yeah, we have to drive home by ourselves.
This is very different from the kind of photographs I make. So when I see work like this, I'm often curious about the process that someone went through, where the slices came from, if it was something that was thought out beforehand, or if it was all really done afterwards. But again, as far as conveying a feeling, it does that, and the lighting is very dramatic, so there's a nice technical element to this, and again, the exposure to me is really nice. There's a lot of contrast, but has a lot of nice texture to it as well.
The Voices, John Fondren, 21 points.
It's a nice image of this guy playing guitar. I'm sure he's in a group. You have lighting coming from one side, which gives texture on his face, and he has a nice expression on his face. I'd like to have seen the whole guitar in either the whole guitar in or much closer, either or, but not in the middle of it like that. You have a nice diagonal with the guitar pointing into one direction.
Neil Gavaldo, class of 2022, RRHOF. Ah, thank you. I should have known that. Melanie Plummer, 22 points.
Okay, this is just a real cute picture. You got a little boy with a cowboy hat sitting on an older truck, maybe out with dad, something like that. Your exposure is great. Your composition is good. I think I would have gotten rid of those two green bushes in the back. They don't add anything to the picture there. And if we could have, and I realize we are Monday morning photographers here, because we can't change what we've got here, but I would have moved just to the right a little bit, cropped off that left a little bit, then we give you more of the truck. Have the truck, because that is an important part of the picture. It's part of what the little boy is at. I would have included just a little bit more of that.
Levi Willis, Gary Merrick, 24 points, second place.
So this again has a conceptual feel to it, kind of like Good and Evil. It's definitely, as I've seen in a couple of these photographs I've talked about, there's a mood to it and a message. Looks to me like, I can't tell if this is the same child, different makeup, photographed twice, or if it is two different kids, but either way, it's a nice technical element going on here, and it's a good on the person who did this for coming up with an idea and then executing it.
Their true colors, Bill Keaton, 22 points.
Here's a picture of someone either in Africa somewhere or in Haiti or someplace like that. And I think you've done well to photograph that person in shadow or in open shadow. I think that your ambience needs to be turned up in Photoshop because skin looks very flat. The colors are very subdued. I think you can do a lot to make this skin tones really sing.
Preparing Mantidi, Mike Lonsdale, 21 points.
Real nice shot of our Guardians fan. I'm not sure, it's just a nice shot. There's nothing technical about it. The lighting's good with it. Again, it's cropped good and tight, but the photographer's getting his message across. Could be a friend at the game. I'm not sure about the black background, but it's a nice shot. The lighting's good. It's just a nice shot.
Team Spirit, Melanie Plummer, 21 points.
Nice beard. Come on, folks.
I really like this portrait. There are many things to observe just physically with this person, but there's also a nice connection with his eyes into the lens. That's not always easy to do with a person, even if they're looking just like that. Sometimes you don't have an emotion, and I think that comes from trusting the person who's photographing them. So I think this is a really beautiful portrait, nice cropping, nice exposure, and again, there's definitely a feeling of trust between the person being photographed and the photographer.
Bhakti, Dave Sabork, 25 points, first place.
Yeah, this image is obviously also one of those that are that has a lot of manipulation in it. I don't, when I see an image that is so manipulated, I kind of want to see the message behind it. And you have it looks like it's against a wall or something. And I'm not sure how to improve this. Maybe have more natural lighting on the person. Yeah. Maybe someone else can add to it.
It's me, Jill Zabka, 20 points.
I love character kind of images. You don't know what he's thinking, but he's thinking something. He's just not standing there getting his picture taken. He's involved in it. He knows that there's somebody there's taking his picture, wants to take his picture, wants to include the feeling of him in it. Again, I would have backed off a little bit, got a little bit more of his neck, his shirt, his jacket, whatever he's wearing, a little more of his hat. I'm not sure about the textured background. That doesn't add to who he is. As far as I can see, there's nothing there that says I'm a cowboy or I'm a rebel or whatever that is. But your exposure's good. The beard's a little short, but we can deal with that. Come on, folks. Yeah. But his eyes are there, like was mentioned. He's giving you a feeling, and that's what he was looking for.
Hale Farm Reenactor, 2014. Robert Boyle, 23 points, third place.
I think this is also a nice portrait. I'm not sure if it's the same photographer as the last few that we've seen that are black and white and similar. I'll leave the beard comment to gentleman on my left. But this is a nice portrait. I think it's exposed nice. It seems like a moment where the person might not have even been too aware that he was being photographed. And I like the black and white aspect of this. Sometimes you wonder what colors might be happening, but I think this really lends itself to being a black and white portrait.
Master Silversmith, Dave Sabork, 23 points, third place.
Yeah, all I want to say is this has so much impact. I mean, I don't think that this has been manipulated. I think maybe their faces were painted like that, but it really blends with the browns. The blue and the browns go well together. The background really works, and there's a connection between the girl and the baby. Yeah, to me, it's close to a perfect picture.
Avatars of Akron, Jackie Meredike, 22 points.
rather emotional picture. I'm not sure who the team was or who they were, but they won. I can see by, and they're sharing the moment together by the expression on their face. They're both holding the trophy. I toyed with the thought of blurring out the background. I realized they're part of the team and that's that. But if the background had been blurred out or a different depth of field, the two people in front would be the main characters, and they would be the ones portraying the feelings and emotions that I think the photographer was going with. At the same time, you've got the team back there, and they are part of it also. So very well done.
If I could add one thing on that comment, I think if this was shot in a journalism environment, and if it was used in a news feature, you went in and manipulated the background, you could get there's an ethics part of that if you're shooting news-wise. And when we saw this one in there, the first thing I thought was I wish that it would have been wide open. To your point, it would have been nice if that the people in the background would have been a little more blurry, because they're, especially the one in the top middle, the expression is not as exciting as some of the others. But anyways, I think you have to be careful if you're shooting anything that you're going to put into a news situation. You can't do anything outside of what's done in the camera. So in a situation like this, shooting as wide open as you could would make a difference for sure. So anyways.
NWSL champions, Paul Gelia, 23 points, third place.
Really curious where this was made. The person is definitely expressing something to the photographer, and I can't tell if it's friend or foe, but it's a nice portrait, a nice light. The color pops because the background is so neutral. So good use of color to make a portrait stronger.
The street actor, Paul Gelia, 22 points. And give me a second, and we'll switch over to pictorial. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, okay, this is a nice image of the ship going through the gate, and it is, in some sense, storytelling, but as a pictorial image, it's not really, it doesn't have a lot of impact. I mean, you have good composition. It's coming from the right and going into the left, and it's going through the bridges and so on. But I don't think you have a lot of impact in this. Maybe you could have worked on your sky to get something more in there, or something like that.
Just curious, did you remove the birds, or were there no birds? Whoever made this. Oh, okay. Whenever I've seen this ship, the birds are always near it, I guess. So I'm curious if this was a moment where the birds weren't there, or if the person painstakingly...
Let me say this. Let me say this. When you're taking a picture and you're going to enter it into a competition that is pretty northern Ohio, and your judges are from northern Ohio, we've seen this. Not that it's a bad picture, not that you shouldn't have entered it, but realize that the judges want to see something that's got impact. Like, wow, that's really cool. You know, we've seen this image several times, or I've seen it several times, and it's a good image, there's nothing wrong with it, but you want the judges to see something. Oh, hello. I'll use the microphone now. You want the judges to see something that's different to them, that goes, oh, wow, that's what that looks like at that particular time of day, or that's what that is. You're going to do better scoring-wise if it's newer to the judges.
Open Sesame, Natalie Wenner, 22 points.
I know her. I take back whatever I just said. I hope she's not here tonight. Yeah, she's watching, yeah. Hi, Natalie. Hello, we're going to move on with this one. The bikes is, I'm not sure the sepia works with that. I'd like to see the color there. I'd like to see a little more detail in the shadows. But what really confused me was the fence. You've got two bikes going around a corner really, really, really fast, and they're going to hit this fence. So I'm not sure if the photographer put the fence in there just to give it a little bit of framing, or what the reason was, but as the viewer, I couldn't figure that out, and I would have liked to have seen that.
Mid-Ohio Motorcycles, Gary Merrick, 21 points.
So I think the first thing that I think about this photo is that I think at a different time of day it would have been stronger. I know when I've traveled, say I've driven across the country a few times, and sometimes you get somewhere and it's just the wrong time of day, but it's an interesting place, and this definitely is a beautiful piece of the earth, but I think you miss out by the time of the day with the lighting here, because the sky's kind of blown out, and if there were an option to wait around and make a photograph later, I think a better photograph could have been made, maybe showing a little more, either a little more of the space or zooming in tighter to really see the different layers. Right now it seems like you might have been at 50 when you should have gone to either 24 or 200 or something like that. But landscapes are tricky like that, and I have all the respect in the world for landscape photographers who work on that high level, because I don't think I've made a landscape photograph in my life that I would show anyone. So,
Grand Canyon, Margot Wethington, 19 points.
Come on, chameleon. All right. It has nice colors. You have a nice diagonal going through from left to right. I don't really mind that the part on the left is a bit out of focus, as long as your head part is sharp, and that's sharp, and you have a light on the eye, which is a good thing. I also like your background, that it's so subdued. Nicely done.
Bob, Marge Brady, 21 points.
The air show, it's a great place to go take pictures. The only thing that I would say about this, I would like the airplanes up higher. It gives that bottom one a little bit more of the exhaust, the curve of the exhaust, or whatever that is coming off the back side of it. I would just raise the image up just a little bit. It's good on rule of thirds. I just would have brought the airplanes, the jets, up into the picture a bit.
Flying in formation, Eric Wethington, 20 points.
I have felt this way. I think this is a nice photograph. You know what I mean? It's this beautiful light. nice choice of focus as well as the moment. Maybe pull back just a touch. So it seems like where I guess if it would be called the chin, could use a little space underneath it. But overall, I think it's a really nice photograph, and it garnered a reaction, so that's always a plus.
Von Trapp Cattle, Dan Sandy, 21 points.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you have a person standing kind of right in the middle with a green background that is reasonably subdued, and it feels very static being right in the middle. Now, if you want your picture to feel peaceful, you put it in the middle. If you want to create stress or a feeling of stress, then you place it to one side. I'm not sure what you were trying to do here. I think that the skin tone is also a bit light and needs to show more modeling. I think I would have found a way to edit only the model and perhaps bring it down a bit and do something more with the background. Maybe blur it more or something like that.
Good Times, Susan Bestel, 21 points.
This looks cold to me. So we didn't score it, no. We have no sense of humor here, do we? It's probably because it's cold outside. This is an interesting image. The trees kind of take away from the front because you want to see, I think there's a river down there, but I realize as a photographer you can't do anything about that. I don't know if you could have got in front of her or not, but you can't do anything about it. The color blue gives it this nice, cool feeling that we got. I think I just would have cropped some of that sky out. I am not a fan of skies, if anybody has judged with me here, unless the sky is the image and it adds to the feeling of the thunderstorm, the sunset, whatever it might be, then the sky is good. If not, it adds nothing to the image, so crop it down to maybe where those two little clouds are.
Blue Alaska, Eric Wethington, 19 points.
So I think this, for me, crosses into that territory I mentioned earlier of being almost more of a photo, not illustration. There's a word for it. I'm drawing a blank. But when I first saw this, I didn't immediately register it as a photograph. That being said, there is a nice compositional element to this. You could tell that a lot of thought went into where everything was placed. I would be curious to see what a straight photograph of this looked like, or if adding everything is what made it visually interesting, or if just as a straight photo it would hold its own. But nice composition, there's a lot of movement, and yeah, maybe find me afterwards if you have this on your phone without all the processing. I'd be curious to see what it looks like.
Rookery Stairway Rainbow, Marge Brady, 21 points.
Here's an image of a lion, and it looks very depressing. It's like the lion says, "I'm trapped here, and I don't want to be here." It's got nice light on it, but as such, I think you've lost some of the texture that needs to be on the lion, and that normally comes with more of a side light. I would also have perhaps have wanted you to shoot this slightly wider so we can see all the tail, and then maybe leave some space in front of the lion. It feels very cramped in there.
I'm watching you. Margot Wethington, 20 points.
I wondered where the stairs went. That was my first thought, is where do they go? Do they just go off into a parking lot somewhere? Do they go off into a field? Is there a pond up there? The fact that they were dead center, I wasn't crazy about. I would have liked them over to the left or the right. And again, there's a little bit too much sky for me. But it's a thought-provoking image. You sit here, and the first thing you gotta wonder is where the steps go. So, good job.
Stairway, Eric Wethington, 19 points.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Guess I'm trying to figure out where I land on this one, because it's interesting to see. It's, you know, like a wedding portrait, but there's that. Seeing animals like this, to me, they're such majestic animals, and it always gives me a sense of awe. But I think, to the comment earlier, the environment that they're in kind of makes it a little distracting. So that back fence is really in focus, and I'm guessing this wasn't shot with a 24, that it was probably shot with a zoom. So I don't know if the person who shot this shot it at like 5, 6, or 8 or something, but I think this kind of photograph, since you have that distracting background, I would be curious what it would look like if it was shot wide open, to try to pull them off and give it a little more dimension. But it's an interesting moment, you know. I think the center composition maybe doesn't help either. So either put them at the bottom or make the foreground, like right now it's really kind of too balanced, I guess. But I would be curious if a shot like this would have more impact, again, if it was really a more shallow depth of field, which if you're shooting it with a 200, say, you're going to get that, even if you shoot wide open, even more so than a 24, as y'all know. So if you're back there again, whoever this is, maybe shoot wide open and see what happens.
Lions Den, Margot Wethington, 21 points.
Yeah, okay, this is a lovely image that shows a family moment. Well, we presume it's a family moment, but anyway. Yeah, we hope it's a family moment. And as such, you've really captured a moment. I think the thing that takes away from it maybe is that the lighting is a bit harsh on the sides of their faces, so your camera can't decide if it should expose for highlights or the shadows. So halfway in between, the face is lit.
If I could add one thing, that I think this is a nice moment. There's no taking away of that. But, and I always hate to say I would have done this because I wasn't there and I don't know what the situation was. So I wonder, well, there's that. But I wonder, like in a shot like this, if you were to either show a lot of the sky, you would suggest something different. Right now, the way it's cropped, it's either, I would say either really come down so it looks like the kid's about to break out of the top of the frame, or back up and make it a lot of sky so you get that idea of kind of the space and the sky being the limit. So right now it is a really nice moment. There's nice colors. Again, maybe a little too much in focus for my taste, but Rich Bogart, who I know he's known around here. Rich was one of my first teachers. He told me once, if you're going to do something, do it. If you're going to make a decision, make it. And he didn't mean that as an insult to the photograph we were talking about. What he was saying is like, it looks non-committal here. It doesn't look like you were either going to say the kid's going to break through the top or there's so much sky. And this looks like you played it safe. So it's a really cool photograph, and again, a beautiful moment. But I find that those little things, like either zoom in or back off, but don't stick in the middle, because you might be missing a really great opportunity. And same with the crop on the gentleman, like either show a little more below his waist or cut up under his shoulder blades, you know. So cool photograph, but just try to think about that if you're in another situation like this.
Laney Flies, Gary Merrick, 23 points. Honorable mention.
I wasn't sure what to make of this. I'm pretty sure it's a puppy, but it might have been a seal. I just wasn't sure. And the photographer caught him in the right lighting. If he could have moved him forward a little bit, had his eye in that one stripe of light, that would have helped. There's not much to bring out here. The background is dark black, obviously, and it gives some feel to the front of it. It's good and sharp. It's just a nice image.
Pensive, Bill Keaton, 23 points. Honorable mention.
This is a postcard, a really beautiful photograph. I think this is one of my favorites of the night. There's clearly a lot of thought that went into the composition and the time the photo was made, or at least it appears there's a lot of thought. If someone made this without a lot of thought, then I'm jealous, because I think it's a beautiful photograph. Nice colors, and I like the way the trees frame most of the image up to the mountains and the top. So, yep, nice photo.
Crystal Mill Portrait, Dave Korosik, 23 points. Honorable mention.
Yeah, okay, this looks like Joshua Tree Monument in California. You have a beautiful sky, and I think you may have used a polarizer, which is fine. And you have the Joshua trees on the right, should be your center of interest. I think as such, you could have made a bit more of them. I mean, my eye goes between the trees on the right and then the rock pile with a light on it. If you could have gone a bit closer to one of the Joshua trees and perhaps gotten lower down, so the tree would break the horizon, I think that would have improved it. But it's a nice image.
Sunrise at Joshua Tree, 21 points. Oh, Joe Smith. Thank you.
This is interesting. The photographer divided the image in thirds, which is good. In this situation, the sky is almost his subject. He used a longer, or she used a longer shutter speed. There was some action, some movement in those clouds. You can see it in the blurriness. But that bottom is as still and as sharp as it can be. And so there's the attraction of I'm thinking maybe morning light with the greenery there, and then the movement and feeling and the emotion of the clouds moving. So it combines for a very nice image. Thank you.
I'm not sure of the pronunciation. Charon, Ohio. Sunrise, Dave Korosek, 23 points, honorable mention.
I like this photograph. It's a very nice, quiet moment. There's a serene feeling and interesting composition, kind of looking down at that angle. I think that was a nice choice, a committed choice, and I like how the I don't know what those are called in the water, what the marsh or whatever that would be. I like how it frames the person. Interesting angles of the boats and that repeating image going across the whole thing. This is a really beautiful photograph, and I like the coolness of it as far as the toning. When I look down at the grass in the foreground, it looks a little more blue than the grass in the background. But I think this is a really wonderful photograph. Whoever made it should be proud of it.
Fisherman on Congo River, Mike Lonsdale, 22 points.
So here you have either a dusk or a dawn picture just after or before sunrise or sunset, and you've got really nice color in the sky, and you also have nice detail in the foreground. I think that the stems of grass on the left really sets the tone for leading your eye into the picture to the right, and then your eye kind of goes to the horizon, which is very nice image.
Sunset over the Great Basin, Joe Smith, 24 points, third place.
I love to see black and whites when there is blacks, whites in them. The processing of this is really nice. Assuming it's a cemetery, I'm not sure whose name that is. Anybody speak Japanese? But it's in the morning, the lights are coming across the hills. It's just a really well done image. The only thing that drew my attention away from it is the dark spot up in the left-hand corner. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be some kind of a frame around it or some kind of a dark, I forget what they call it. Vignette, thank you. If it's going to be that, or if that was something there, but the way the rest of the sky looks, it looks like it should have just gone that nice grayish color all the way around. But the overall image is really well done.
Soul Consoling Tower, and I apologize, Dave, I can't read the next part. What is that? Thank you. Manzanite, the Soul Consoling Tower of Manzanite, David Korosek, 24 points, third place.
This is, it looks like it's on fire. And I think for me, part of it is because this almost feels more like a painting. And I don't know if that was done a little bit afterwards or if the colors were really pushed. But there's a nice graphic composition to it. And again, it just feels more like a painting to me. Maybe not. Maybe that is straight out of camera. But the top looks a little more processed than the bottom. But that being said, it does a good job of framing the headstone, which seems to be the most important part. And I'm sure you could go off into as deep of a thought as you would like if you want to talk about the trees and the branches of the trees, and you could probably have some deep philosophical thoughts from an image like this. So well done on that part of getting some kind of emotion. I would just think maybe if it was toned down a little for my taste, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, nicely done.
Burning Bush, Melanie Plummer, 25 points, second place.
Yeah, here we have either a beach scene or a lake scene. Looks more like a, well, I don't know. I'm not going to risk what it is. You've put your center of interest way far onto your left, and then that normally works okay if there are space on the right that makes sense. And I think maybe it's a bit too far on the left. Maybe it needs a bit more space on the left, and the really dark sky area on the top right, I think maybe that could have been brought up a bit. But you have nice light. It's almost a silhouette, but you have light on the structure. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to have seen a bit more detail on the white bits of cloud. You know, it almost seems like the clouds are burnt out. If you could have gotten a bit more detail into those clouds, I think that would also have helped it.
Ramshackle Hut, Salton Sea, California, Joe Smith, 22 points.
All right, I couldn't find anything wrong with this one at all. When I judge an image, I look at it, I like to see it. Man, I should like to sit there in the morning with a cup of coffee and just look at this. I mean, the waterfall's in the right place. It's exposed almost perfectly. Maybe a little more details in the shadows, but then I just needed something to say. It's just a beautiful, beautiful image. Very well done.
Watkins Glen Rainbow Falls, Rick Mills, 24 points, third place.
That is some good timing. I am not a nature photographer, and I have tried to photograph birds before, and from my minimal experience doing that, I know it's very difficult to get something where the nice wingspan like that and in focus. It's hard to tell if the background, it's maybe a little dark. Or something. It's a pretty. It gets a little muddy in the back, maybe, but it's nice the way the everything is outlined, the shape of the wing, and again, technically for getting this shot in focus, that's very impressive. And maybe the toning could be a little lighter-handed.
Short-eared owl, Dave Sabork, 24 points, third place.
It's a nice either sunrise or sunset picture on the pier. You have the line of the pier going from left to right and the nice sky in the background. The picture is very busy though. You don't have there's no one thing where your eye wants to settle on. Perhaps you could have made something with the lights and made that vertical rather than a horizontal. I think that maybe half of the picture on your left does not really add too much. Your picture is either in the left half or in the right half, but I think it kind of competes with each other.
Lorraine Lighthouse, Dennis Wirt, 21 points.
I'll have to call Starbucks. Just another just incredible picture of a waterfall. I'm sure this is probably Watkin Glen again. The detail, the feel of it, the waterfall, all of it is just beautifully done. The exposure time is good. The only thing looking at it now, I might have just raised it up a little bit, let a little bit more water come out of the bottom of the picture rather than topple over the rocks at the top. But again, just a wonderful image.
Watkins Glen Cavern Cascade, Rick Mills, 24 points, third place.
I think I'm getting a lot of these tonight that look like they're a composite type of image. But this is something I don't know how to do, so I automatically think when someone does something like that, that's that comes from a place that I wouldn't even know where to start. So pre-conceptualization is always impressive to me. This being said, I think it is an interesting looking image. It almost looks three-dimensional, the way the branches are pulling off of what looks to be some type of planetary thing in the background. So really great technique, and I think there's some heavier parts of the sky that are a little distracting, or maybe this was some kind of long exposure. I don't know what it is or what the technique was to make it, but I think it's cool. It has a, what's the guy's name that did Beetlejuice? What's his name? Tim Burton. I keep thinking of Tim Burton when I see the branches in the foreground. So again, not something I would make, but I think that it is cool.
Magical Marsh, Jill Zabka, 22 points.
Yeah, this is a nice little still life, something that you find in the street. You did really well to see the image and then to place your camera where you did with that viewpoint. You have nice lighting. It gave you a nice shadow on the one side of the handle, and the chain is nicely lit. It's a nice image.
Gone but not forgotten, Robert Boyle, 24 points, third place.
Just a real nice, simple but impactful image of a barn. I probably would have shot it vertically rather than horizontally, because you've got a tree just cut right off here. You'd have a little bit more of the grass coming into the barn there. I would have played with the sky a little bit, just darken that up a little bit, because again, your eye goes to the brightest spot in the picture, and that is that. So overall, it's a very nice shot of a barn.
Back Road Barn, Dennis Wirt, 21 points.
I'm going to echo what I mentioned earlier about it being a nice moment where this was captured. There's a nice bit of warm light, but something I've mentioned on some of the other photos is that I would have, not I would have, but I think either go in tighter or back out and show more of what's going on. To me, it seems like there's I'm wanting to see or feel something wider or tight enough to see the whiskers and the hair, or anything that's kind of a fine detail. That being said, if this was being photographed for a magazine, it'd be a perfect double-page spread, because you could put text on the left side, text across the top, or whatever, and the gutter would run clear enough in the middle for this to be a perfect double spread. So I think it's a really cool photograph. Nice, again, warm, directional light, getting ready to leap, which is not easy to catch. Maybe dodge the deer a little bit, just, to kind of bring it off the page a little. But this is a really nice photograph.
Leaping buck, Jackie Merdyke, 24 points, third place.
Yeah, here you have a nice fall color picture, and here you've done what you had to do to make the colors sing. You have nice texture in the leaves, you have a movement in the water, and it's a picture that you can have on your wall and look at for a long time. I might want to darken the where the waterfall comes from, and that against the frame. I might want to darken that very slightly, because that is one of the lightest parts of the frame. But it's a nice image.
Watkins Glen, Eagle Falls, Rick Mills, 24 points, third place.
Kind of an interesting shot. I'm assuming that it's some kind of a fishing pier, and that might be like lobster traps or some kind of fishing stuff. I'm not sure what it would be. If you could have, it would have been really neat to get rid of the garbage cans. They don't add to the feel of maybe the romance of being a fisherman, or the job of being a fisherman, or something like that. If they could have been moved over, and I realize sometimes you can't, but they don't add to the feel of what I'm assuming is fishing gear. Maybe somebody comes up from the other side, it looks like there's a roof or something in the back there on the left-hand side, and they load their gear from that side. The deck is good, the cattails are neat, the sky is a bit out of focus, so you probably shot at a little bit of a longer exposure, or your aperture wasn't where it should have been. But overall, it's a great idea. I just probably would have moved the trash cans if possible.
Dock at the Bay, Paul Gilia, 19 points.
I think this is a pretty straight-ahead photograph. There's a nice use of color. I kind of feel like you might have pushed the midtones a bit much. Maybe pushed the midtones and compacted the highlights a little bit. So kind of, to me, it gives it a bit of a processed feel. I don't know, or maybe there's a lot of clarity going on. But I think it's a good choice of color. The way you frame this to pretty much make it rust and green, with a few other things popping out. I tend to not do a lot of post work to my photographs, so I wonder if this photograph would be as strong with a little less processing, and maybe a little shallower depth of field. But that being said, I think it's a good choice of what to keep in the frame. It's a nice crop, you get some cool shapes. A little tight on the top, but I think that looks like a choice and not an accident, so I can respect that too. But maybe a little more processing than my personal taste would care for.
Turkey Truck, Dennis Wirt, 21 points.
It's a nicely lit scene from inside a church or a building. I presume it's a church, and you've managed to keep your verticals straight to some extent. It's a, and your center of interest seemed to be this right-hand strong column that seems to be very dominant. I think if you were able to move a little over to your left and shot from there, you may have been able to keep the lines straight on the pews. The one thing that sets good architectural photography apart from, a good one from a not so good one is that the verticals and the horizontals are straight. I'm a bit bothered by the dome in the middle on the top that is cropped. I'd like to have seen that in the frame as well.
Wise Temple number 2, Robert Boyle, 22 points.
I think it goes the other way one more time. There you go. There you go. There we go. These short-eared owls, I think is what they're called. Just a great shot. I've never been out to shoot them yet. I'd like to get out this winter. They're doing a lot of it out in Lorraine County now. If you want to go out to Gore Orphanage Road near Route 20, they're out there. But this is just, it's a really, I'm going to say lucky shot, but it's a good shot. I mean, you've got to get the cameras are going to focus on the eye, continuous focusing, exposure, all that. You didn't cut a wing off. You didn't exclude anything outside the image. And you were fortunate or lucky enough to get 2 of them in one frame. Very well done. Yes.
Flight or Fight, Jackie Merdijk, 26 points, first place. And that concludes our evening. Thank you for coming. 19s and 20s.